We're live.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
How are you?
Is live?
Yeah, we are on. Yes, this is exciting. Very exciting.
What number week of this is?
Number 15.
Number 15. How's that for
Week
consistency?
15, Anti Semitism.
That's right.
Yes.
Oh, man. Okay. Very good. Cool.
Got it?
Yes. Got it. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I can't talk right now. I'm sorry. I can't talk now. Okay. Well, we'll have to talk another time. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for joining us as we're getting rolling here. Remember, we said 6 feet away. Okay, all of you, scoot back. Yeah. Okay.
We have an
Okay.
audience tonight
Yeah.
on Facebook and live.
And like real life. Yeah.
Yeah. Facebook Live and in front of us.
Exactly. Exactly.
But don't worry, they're all part of our household.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, so you really got to scoot back, okay?
I am.
Okay. Okay. Well, here we are.
We're here.
It's always a dramatic start. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, we wanted to tackle tonight. We wanted to talk about the exactly. We wanted to talk about what's been, I think, an interesting week for Jews in America. I know for myself, it's been a fascinating week as someone who's a very intense sports fan and someone who's also, I guess, a pretty intense Jew. You combine the sports and the Judaism, and it made for a really interesting week.
Yes.
And I know that on Wednesday, I feel like a lot of this is just all going down, and it was really, really interesting last Wednesday. As Deshaun Jackson, I think we mentioned it briefly last week, and then
That's right.
as more things developed, and I wrote about it. It was just definitely an interesting day, and I was so just fascinated and interested and passionate about the news going on. It was hard to really do anything else, So I wrote a couple pieces on my blog about my ability to forgive Deshaun Jackson and my hesitation to forgive Steven Jackson. And happy Tuesday to you, Lee. Good to see you, and Charlie as well.
Can we take a minute then while you're doing? Yeah. Say hello to Rachel and Jacob.
And Ben, what's up, Ben? Good to see everyone. Yeah. So so it's been like I said, just a very interesting week, and it's only gotten more interesting, I think, as the week's gone on. Until I think just a few minutes ago, news broke that the latest anti-Semite, Nick Cannon, has been fired from CBS. So it just gets more interesting as the days go on, as the weeks progress. So yeah, definitely a lot to talk about. And
why was he fired? I'm thinking in my head, like, way to go CBS for taking a stand. But I also don't know the whole story. So
right.
We just talked recently about judging favorably and not being quick to judge. So that's an example of being quick to judge. And I really don't even know the full story. I'm excited to hear tonight what's really going on. And then, after we hear some more, maybe then we can make some sort of conclusion for ourselves, at least.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what we're going to do tonight basically is for anyone who has not been glued as much to Twitter and the news as me this last week, I'll fill you in a little bit just about what's going on, and hopefully bring out an approach, from a Jewish perspective of how to deal with all of this. It's a lot to deal with. It's a lot to think about, and we're just going to offer an approach, and God willing, we can be inspired from it.
I like that. It's not about passing judgment, or it's really just an approach on how ourselves to internally deal with what's going on and how to process it.
Exactly. So, yes, so by way of background, last week the phrase "quote Jews" was trending on Twitter, as well as I think it was on Sunday. There was a hashtag Jewish privilege also trending on Twitter, and what exactly was going on with that? So when Jews was trending, it had to do with Deshaun Jackson, the well-known, very athletic, fast, talented wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles. And basically, a number of things happened. On July 4th, Louis Farrakhan, the head of Nation of Islam, the noted anti-Semite, who's a spokesman, he speaks about issues of race, and he's been embraced to a large extent from a surprising number of people, celebrities, athletes, etc. And he's had rising popularity. And he gave a speech on July 4th. And
What's his name?
Louis Farrakhan. And Deshaun Jackson posted on that. He said, "This man is powerful. This man powerful. I hope everyone got a chance to watch this. Don't be blinded. Know what's going on." And just by way of background on Louis Farrakhan, you can definitely encourage you to Google him and see what he's about. But he has the following quotes that I just, in a 5-minute Google search, this is what I found. He tweeted on October 16th, 2018, quote, "I'm not an anti-Semite, I'm anti-termite." It's obviously not very nice. Calling the Jews termites is never a nice thing. Then he has said it in another speech at some point. The ADL, by the way, Anti-Defamation League, labels him an anti-Semite and has too long of quotes, too many quotes for me to even read. Like, my patience level is not that high. My attention span is not that great. And I couldn't even finish the whole thing. So I'm just giving you a little sampling here. Louis Farrakhan, who says about the Jews, "You are Satan masquerading as a covenanted people of God. You must be exposed regardless of the consequences."
Wow.
Yes. And he also says, "Some of you think that I'm just somebody who's got something out for the Jewish people. You're stupid. Do you think I would waste my time if I did not think it was important for you to know Satan? My job is to pull the cover off Satan so he will never deceive you and the people of the world again." So again, not a nice couple comments that I just mentioned from Louis Farrakhan. Again, a person who's been somewhat embraced, in the modern, in the present day, to a kind of a shocking level. And this is the guy that kind of got this all rolling when Deshaun Jackson said that this man is powerful. And then Deshaun Jackson highlighted a quote from a book. I did a little research. It was put out in 1980. It was called "The Nazis World War II" by Robert Edwin Hertzstein. And this is the quote that got everything rolling. So if you imagine it's an Instagram picture and there were some highlights, and this is the quote that was highlighted. And I'm reading you the part that was highlighted, then I'll tell you when he stopped highlighting and what he posted on the Instagram. Quote, and again, if you imagine this is the quote being shown on a Instagram post.
Should I pull it up?
Well, I have it right here.
Oh.
Yeah, it's probably too complicated to share the screen and everything. So, but if you're interested, I can send it to you. Quote, "Hitler said, because the white Jews knows that the Negroes are the real children of Israel, and to keep America secret, the Jews will blackmail America. They will extort America. Their plan for world domination won't work if the Negroes know who they are. The white citizens of America will be terrified to know that all this time they've been mistreating and discriminating and lynching the children of Israel." And then he stops highlighting. And then the rest of the quote that was there said, "After I die, I will one day cause World War III just by this message, which will be like planting a seed in a people's minds until it sprouts once they nurture that seed and seek more truth and learn Hitler was right." So that was the part that was not quoted. So
that's Farrakhan?
No, this is Deshaun Jackson, the receiver from the Eagles.
This was the original thing that started it.
This was the original thing that got the ball rolling. This picture of this quote that he highlighted. And needless to say, quoting Hitler, and by the way, it's not, Hitler never said that, but it's never good when you quote even someone who you think is Hitler, certainly. And the implication of this quote seems to be something along the lines, I don't really understand it, but something along the lines of Jewish world domination, something along those lines, and saying that Hitler was right, obviously never good. And this is what he posts. So Deshaun Jackson, at some point, I guess, comes to realize that this was not a good move. He's probably encouraged to pull it down, take it down, and he does. He deletes the post, and then I think I believe he issued some sort of like apology maybe in writing. Then he made a video apology, and then a very eloquent apology again, like something he typed up and posted on Instagram. I took some heat for this actually, but I bought his apology. This is before I looked more into like Farrakhan and everything, but I kind of chalked it off to ignorance. I wrote about this, and tomorrow's actually a big birthday for me, and something that as I'm aging, I'm able to take some heat better than I used to. I don't care as much. So I did take some heat for my more lenient stance and forgiving stance on these comments. I actually wrote something. It was posted on the h.com, not their website, but on their Facebook page. And there are some nice likes and things like this, but definitely some comments like basically calling me like a naive like fool. That's okay. I can deal with that.
Is he a follower of Farrakhan? And then
it seems to be
reposted
it seems to be he's an admirer of Farrakhan. Again, this quote is not Farrakhan's, but it sounds like something he would say. And basically, again, he issued an apology that to me it looked like he was serious and looked like he was like shaken up by the impact of what he did. And he pledged to learn about the Holocaust, and he's actually already met with a Holocaust survivor, and he has a trip already being planned to go to Auschwitz.
Yeah.
So
is it possible that maybe from this incident he really is understanding that following blindly isn't the way to go? And
it could be right. Again, I was inclined to accept his apology and to chalk it off to real ignorance. Which again is not an excuse. We never have an excuse, but I'm sure a lot of us maybe have said things in our life just due to sheer ignorance. We literally just don't know what we're saying, and we grew up hearing something, and there's actually like no hate that we're feeling. It's just an ignorant. Sometimes people say things of ignorance, and personally, I'm more able to forgive that as opposed to someone who's actually hateful and wishes harm upon us. So that's kind of the first thing that went down, and I wrote something about this, and this bothered me a lot, and I wrote about this, and I was a lot harsher. A guy named Steven Jackson, for those who are not aware, was a very talented, I think was a guard for the Indiana Pacers for a bunch of years, and recently a spokesman for Black Lives Matter. He knew George Floyd, and has been very outspoken recently about race. And I believe this is before Deshaun Jackson apologized, but Steven Jackson goes on Instagram, and he at first there was a video of him speaking where he said the following. And hello, everyone who's joined us, by the way. Good to see everyone, Vlad and Norm Perry. Good to see y'all. Steven said, so I just read a statement that the Philadelphia Eagles posted regarding Deshaun Jackson's comments. You're trying to educate himself, educate people, and he's speaking the truth, right? He's speaking the truth. He don't hate nobody, but he's speaking the truth of the facts that he knows and trying to educate others. What's up, Johnny? Good to see you. So you have a post here from Steven Jackson who's defending these comments from Deshaun Jackson, who had already apologized, I believe, around when he posted this, and saying basically, don't back down. He was upset at the Philadelphia Eagles put out a very harsh censure of these comments, calling them like reprehensible and terrible. And underneath it all, Steven Jackson was upset because a number of years ago, Riley Cooper, a white receiver for the Eagles, made a terrible comment against a black person. And I guess Steven Jackson felt like the response, and I don't remember, I don't think the response was that harsh. And he felt that there was some hypocrisy, and he was troubled by that. And he basically calls this post from Deshaun Jackson, from this fake Hitler quote, educating others and himself and spreading the truth, which not simple. Now, he then removes this post. I think it was the next day. He deleted this post, and instead he wrote the following, as if it's almost like he's trying to apologize or walk back from the quotes, but this is what he writes. He says, "To whom it may concern, your race's pain doesn't hurt more than the other race's pain. Don't act like your hardships are more devastating than ours. Never waste time explaining to people who never supported you anyway." So he issues a statement which doesn't appear to me like any kind of apology. Unlike Deshaun Jackson, again, who wrote, you could go look it up actually on Instagram, it felt like a very sincere and beautiful explanation where and desire to educate himself about anti-Semitism and the Holocaust and Hitler. You didn't quite see this from Stephen Jackson. And eventually, I think the next night, he has an interview with Rabbi, I think, Wolpe, a rabbi, I think, in California. And again, he doesn't quite back down. He expresses, I think, that he used the wrong words, but he doesn't quite condemn Louis Farrakhan or anything of the sort. So that's Stephen Jackson, who took a lot of heat for that, understandably. And then this one kind of stung a little bit. Malik Jackson, former Denver Broncos Super Bowl champion. I believe he recovered a fumble, maybe even for a touchdown in the Super Bowl. So I'm just, I have like a personal feeling for him. And he actually went on and made a couple of quotes about the, quote, "Honorable Farrakhan is nothing like that vile scum Hitler. He speaks truth." So I guess give him props for calling Hitler the vile scum that he was, but he calls him the Honorable Farrakhan. He said a couple days ago, maybe yesterday, he wrote somewhat of an apology also towards the Jewish, community and other communities that Farrakhan has come out against.
After he said this.
After this, and so he kind of walked back from his support, but he still called him the Honorable, Louis Farrakhan. He called him honorable.
Well, these celebrities, like sports figures, they're all followers and fans of this guy.
Well, I don't know if all of them, certainly, but yeah, definitely more than you would more than you would realize. Yes.
Like, we don't think that that's the case necessarily. But
yeah.
Wow.
And again, for me, this has just been really fascinating as a Jew and as an avid sports fan. And one of the fascinating things for me has been on the sports talk shows, they've been talking about this. So someone I've been very critical of, at least for his positions in sports, and I just never like Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless has a show with Shannon Sharp, the Broncos Hall of Famer. And about these issues, I've really come to appreciate Skip. He seems actually like an amazing person. And you get through these real issues, no sports, and these talks about race and prejudice, you get a real sense, I guess, of the person. And I've come to really come around on Skip Bayless.
You could disagree on some things, but
what really counts, I admire him. And he's interviewing, he's having a discussion on his show with Shannon Sharp. It's just like a back and forth. And, the legendary, Broncos tight end. And basically they're talking about this Deshaun Jackson episode. And Skip basically starts talking to Shannon Sharp about Louis Farrakhan, who we discussed earlier. And Skip says, quote, "He has made it clear over the years he does not like the Jewish people." And then Shannon Sharp comes to his defense and he says, "Well, not from the conversations I've had with the minister. He's made it clear that anybody that sat down with him, he says he doesn't." So Shannon Sharp is basically coming to Louis Farrakhan's defense, doesn't call him the Honorable Farrakhan, but calls him the minister, and denies that he's anti-Semitic, despite the clear comments otherwise.
So Skip, I just want to make sure I'm following.
Yeah.
Skip and Sharp do the show together.
Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp, they have a talk show.
Okay.
Skip Bayless is white, Shannon Sharp is black. Shannon Sharp, I haven't been following so much, but again, it seems like he's been very much talking about the struggle, against racism and whatnot. And they had this conversation about Louis Farrakhan and about everything going on. Sweetheart, I need you to scoot back. I'm sorry. It's just too close. Okay, I'm looking, for those who can't see, like we're looking at the screen, and then like my two daughters' faces, like literally right where the screen is, and it's just confusing. Okay.
Help maintain perspective through this whole thing.
Exactly.
To not get caught up and remember what's right here in front of us too.
Exactly. Jeremiah, good to see you here, and Avi as well. Good to see everyone. Okay, so Shannon Sharp again is referring to Louis Farrakhan as, I guess, the minister. who is not really anti-Semitic.
So these guys do a show together, and they disagree on this issue.
Not necessarily. Skip kind of backed down. You don't want to get in a fight, about if Louis Farrakhan is an anti-Semite or not. But they often argue about things, and they've talked about race a lot recently and about these different things. So, but Skip was more critical, I would say, of Louis Farrakhan, and then Shannon Sharpe came to his defense, and basically Skip brought up how actually Farrakhan was in a picture with Barack Obama, and then Shannon Sharpe brought up maybe there's a double standard and whatever it is. But yeah, it was just interesting for me.
Okay.
And then
I'm gonna do a diaper. I'll be right
okay. And then more recently, Nick Cannon, again, was just fired, within the hour, something like that. Breaking news on from Live from the Bunker. But he's obviously, a well-known rapper and actor on these shows, The Mask, or I forgot what the shows are called. But clearly a well-known person, famous person. And he came under fire recently, on this talk show, I guess, where he said that it's never hate speech. You can't be anti-Semitic when we are the Semitic people, when we are the same people who they want to be. That's our birthright. We are the true Hebrews. Jewish power goes as deep as the Rothschilds' centralized banking, the 13 families, the bloodlines that control everything, even outside of America. So again, this anti-Semitic trope that you hear a lot, and I've actually seen this. I posted on Twitter my blog on some of these, on Deshaun Jackson, or some of these, posts that have been going around. And yeah, people even called me out. You're like, you Ashkenazi Jew, you're not even actually Jewish. You're not really, we're the real Hebrews, So I don't know much about it, with this Black Hebrew movement trying to, I guess, claim that they're the real Jews, the real Hebrews, and us, white, white-skinned Ashkenazi Jews are fakers, essentially. And I don't know enough about it. Jay-Z said last year, this is going back a little bit, in one of his new songs, he said that Jewish people own all the property in America. 21 Savage's song ASMR, which I never heard of them, but I listened this morning just to hear the lyrics inside. It's actually, they seem like a talented group. I don't know them, but they said, we've been getting that Jewish money. Everything is kosher. LeBron James shared this lyric on Instagram about a year or two ago as well, came under fire for it. Claimed just total kind of ignorance about it, and I believe him, to be honest. So you're seeing this pattern of these classic anti-Semitic tropes being brought to the forefront today by mainstream Hollywood, or famous, well-known figures. And I'm sure a lot of you have maybe seen a very beautiful, very touching article by Jamel Hill, a black woman who works for ESPN, who came under fire about 12 years ago or so, in making some sort of analogy about sports and the NBA Finals and the Celtics. She she compared something to Hitler, it was just trying to be funny, and she was suspended for a week for that. And she wrote this beautiful piece, I think it was for the Atlantic online magazine, and she writes about it. I encourage everyone to read it. And she says some things that are, I guess, based on what we're saying now, not necessarily so surprising. But
who's Jamal Hill again?
She's a black commentator, sports analyst for ESPN.
Okay.
And she said that as a kid, I heard elders in my family say in passing that Jewish people were consumed with making money and that they owned everything. My relatives never dwelled on the subject, and nothing about their tone indicated that they thought anything they were saying was anti-Semitic. Not the lack of awareness would be any excuse. This also doesn't mean that my family or other African Americans are more or less anti-Semitic than others in America, but experiencing the pain of discrimination and stereotyping did not prevent them from spreading harmful stereotypes about another group. So she's calling out, very praiseworthy of her, calling out anti-Semitism even among her community, who has been oppressed and had to deal with terrible racism and problems. But that didn't make them above stereotyping others, which as Jews we need to remember also. Just because we get anti-Semitism doesn't necessarily put us above stereotyping others, and we have to be sensitive to that. But it's a very beautiful, beautiful article. Another amazing offensive lineman from the Steelers has posted videos in support of the Jewish community. And making just fascinating, beautiful, very touching points, and calling out, why is there not like a widespread outrage against this among athletes? In the same way that you have widespread outrage when Drew Brees made a comment about, his stance on standing for the national anthem and not having so much. I forget his language, but basically he doesn't value so much the idea of like protesting the national anthem by kneeling, and he came under a lot of fire for that. And people are asking, like, where is that passion from around the league and around the world, when these Jewish comments are coming out? So that's a little bit just what's going on. I know personally, and I'm sure a lot of you watching have maybe experienced your own personal anti-Semitism. I remember, just two direct examples that happened to me. I'll just say very briefly, was when I played basketball for my Jewish high school. Sometimes we'd encounter, different remarks about, us being Jewish. And one time, actually, there was a comment that a guy made when they called a foul on him, and he's like, "These refs are so Jewish," just to insult us. And I looked up at him. He was like, a foot taller than me, and he said, "That's not very nice." And I think he understood that. I don't think it was like meant to be a hateful remark. It was an insensitive, ignorant remark. And the other example I had actually was I was one time getting on the train from Manhattan, that goes to Connecticut, the Metro North, and I was sitting there after a long day, and a woman there had a bag of wine. Most people drink beer on that, but she had a bag of wine.
Was it like a bottle in a paper bag?
Yeah, a bottle in a paper bag. And she was talking to her boyfriend, and she said, like, on the phone, and she's like, "I have a great idea for how we're going to get very rich, and we're going to make tons of money, but I can't tell you now because there's Jews on this train, and therefore I can't tell you." And then she said, "And by the way, can you have dinner ready for me? I want like falafel and hummus, and that's what I want for dinner." And it was just kind of odd. Okay, anyway. So I'm sure a lot of you have experienced, anti-Semitism. Feel free, by the way, to post it, share your story, kind of on the chat, by all means.
Just as far as the first story that you had with the phrase that someone used, I think it's interesting. I've been thinking about this. There's so many phrases that we use in our lives that we don't even realize where they come from. Not necessarily about hating other people, just like, I can't think of the moment of like, what are some of these just like common, holy cow, one of my kids, yeah, holy cow, where does that come from? What else? There's so many. If you could think of any, put them on the chat. I think it's really interesting to just be aware of what we're saying and where it comes from and the source of it. I think that's. Yeah.
And again, I'm ashamed to admit this, but like, and this is why I don't want to cancel anyone who makes an ignorant remark, because like, growing up, I heard the term, like gypped, which is a derogatory statement against, the gypsy people, or someone who's an Indian giver who gives something and takes it back. Those are like racist remarks, and people sometimes didn't know better. They don't know any better. And therefore they might go ahead and not have that sensitivity. And it's not necessarily that they're hateful people, they're just ignorant. And that's where the education comes in to create those sensitivities.
Just some other stories. One that actually just remembered, when I was in college, I was in at the first school I went to, there weren't many Jews around. Well, there were Jews around, but not in my school. It was in Boston. And I was in this honors group. And so we had this special meeting. The honors kids of my age got to go to the president of the college's house, and we sat in his living room and had a talk with him. And I think he was trying to like get us riled up because no one was really like participating. But so he starts just talking about like what's going on in Israel. Maybe that's, is that a whole other topic or not? Maybe I'm bringing up anyways, and about just some of the hateful things Israel's doing. And at that point I had just spent 9 months living in Israel right before I started my freshman year of college, which was right now. And I was like, have you been there? Like, do you know what you're talking about? Because I was just living there. But I just felt like I remember I like passed his office in the library, and I just feel like such tension, like that he was just like hating and relentlessly. And then the other thing, recently we had some really nice guys come check out our roof to see what needs to be fixed, and we were schmoozing, and I said how I was expecting the baby at the time really soon, and I said my husband's a rabbi, and they're like, oh really, you're Jewish? And it's clear that some of them have never met Jews before, and they're like, oh, so you guys own everything, like you guys control the world, right? And I'm like, no, that's actually not the case. And I haven't like really experienced such comments before, so I was like, kind of didn't know what to say. But the guy who was more of his boss was like, nah, like you don't talk that way. So it's really interesting, and I don't think he meant anything negative about it. I think like that was just the reputation, the generalization that he had heard, and he didn't know, never heard, wasn't educated to know any differently. So it's really interesting. Like, do I want to use those roofers to fix our roof? I mean, I don't think necessarily not. I think it really came out of ignorance, and maybe it's an opportunity to show them that like we're not like that, and to show what we are really like.
Yeah, beautiful. Right, and again, I think it's for me, my sensitivity and where I get upset is where I get the sense it's out of hate instead of ignorance. Again, we're not giving an excuse to be ignorant. We have to educate ourselves and educate each other. But yeah, I have more patience, I guess, for that than I do for where it seems like it's actually coming out of hate. Now, so we began again by just describing the renewal of anti-Semitism, and just briefly before. I think we want to share some approaches for how to handle it. Just want to share some of the basic characteristics of it, different aspects of it, if you will. And, it's the thing about anti-Semitism is, there's just, a couple different, things that characterize it. And one of those is that anti-Semitism seems to be like a universal phenomenon, in the sense that it comes from all sides of the spectrum, right? Whether it was the early Christians who accused us of being, God killers, whether in recent years it's been in the form of terrorism and anti-Israel sentiment being disguised as like a politically correct form of anti-Semitism, from people, on the far left or in the Muslim community. Unfortunately, in recent months, you've seen it rear its head in the Black community, whether from these comments we're seeing from supporters of Louis Farrakhan, these athletes, the Black Hebrews, as they call them, who carried out the violent attacks in Jersey City, and I believe it was in Muncie as well, when Jews were being attacked in the streets in New York City, and that was really coming again from more of the Black community. We all know anti-Semitism comes from the far right, the KKK, the neo-Nazis, and from the far left. Voltaire, the famous philosopher, has a disturbing quote. I don't know if everyone is aware of this quote. He says, in short, we... I'm sorry. It says, in short, we find them, the Jews, an ignorant and barbarous people, who have long united with the most detestable superstition and in most invincible hatred for every people by whom they are tolerated and enriched. But, to Voltaire's great credit, he said, still, we ought not to burn them. So thank you, Voltaire.
Hate or just burning.
Yeah, so they ought not to burn us, and this is coming from Voltaire. So the first, again, characteristic of anti-Semitism has been the universality of it. Secondly, is the intensity of it. People who have hated us, it doesn't stop. I guess Voltaire stopped short of wanting to annihilate us, but we know that there's people throughout history who've wanted complete and utter genocide against us and annihilation. Whether with Haman, whether with Hitler, Ahmadinejad, 15 years ago or so, is calling for Israel to be literally swept into the sea, wiped off the map, utter genocide and destruction. The intensity. Another aspect of anti-Semitism is the longevity. This has happened from time immemorial, from the beginning of our history as a people, and it's carried on throughout the generations. In biblical times, post-biblical times, our journey in the exile, through Europe and crusades and massacres and all these accusations at us. Overall, we had it pretty decent in the Islamic countries for many, many years, until eventually we were expelled, in the 80s from a whole bunch of the Islamic countries. So it's really gone on until today, 2020. We see it in mainstream. You go on Twitter, you see some of these comments, these vile comments on Instagram, on Twitter. It is right in front of us today, perhaps more accessible than ever. It's not hard to find. So it's gone on forever. And then the last characteristic of it that I just wanted to briefly mention, and then we'll get into perhaps some approaches and how to deal with it, is the utter irrationality of it. We've discussed some of these claims leveled at us so far, these irrational claims, but the idea that we're God killers, the accusation, that we'd sacrifice Christians for reenactment each year, blood libels, the accusation that we use Christian blood for our matzahs, and that's actually been borrowed in the Arab world, that we use the blood of Arab children, Muslim children for matzahs.
Which, if you know anything about keeping kosher, we check our eggs because blood's not kosher.
Right. Murder is against the Torah.
The Ten Commandments. Right?
A Jew must give up their life before murdering someone, and certainly eating blood is one of those things that's not kosher. So it is absurd. There has been something that Jewish life has been lost for something called torturing of the host in the Christian service of taking the wafer and everything that means, that we've been accused of, which is representing, I think, the body of Jesus, and we've been accused of torturing that wafer and torturing their God, and Jewish lives have been lost because of that, because of torturing this wafer. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, the famous book in which it chronicles the supposed gathering of Jewish elders every, so often, where they just plot the world domination and the world takeover.
How come no one told me about that?
Yeah, exactly. And as a matter of fact, I forgot if it was in the tattered cover in Denver or Barnes and Noble, but my buddy actually saw it being sold in one of these stores, one of our bookstores in Denver, this maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And he called them out for it, and I think they removed it, but theoretically available in your local bookstore. I believe it's the most widely sold book in Saudi Arabia in recent years, and it's very frightening. And then finally, just as far as the utter irrationality, is the rejecting of. Sorry, just please move back a little bit, okay? And we don't lay on the table. Just you go on the couch. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So. So basically, it's just totally irrational. And in recent years, how Israel has offered their aid and assistance to countries who are suffering, who have earthquakes or tsunamis or whatever international crisis, natural crisis that exists. The Jews were Israel offered aid, and it has often been refused. Again, not super rational. So anti-Semitism, as we mentioned, it's been around. It's intense. It's irrational. Just go back a little bit. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's irrational, and it's hard to understand. And the question is, where do we go from here? Right? What do we do with it? There's one question potentially to ask, which is why? Why do we deal with this? Right? Why does this happen? Sorry, you have to move. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Okay. No. Okay. So the question is why, and Rabbi Soloveitchik says that the word why in Hebrew, lama, some of you might have heard me say this before, it means lima, to what? So often the answer to why things happen or why this is the simple answer is we don't know. But the question is not why, but lima, like for or to what? Like, what will I do about this? What am I going to learn from this? What am I going to do about it? As opposed to just wonder why, to ask myself, so what does it mean for me? What am I going to do?
Right.
What
So
am I going to do
focuses
about it?
on action and moving forward, and not just sitting in what's going on, but stepping up.
Exactly. And I think that there's a couple of approaches, and one that I think resonates with me more than others. There's something that we're seeing now, and it's powerful and fascinating and helpful, because I think part of it is education, that we need to educate people about what's going on, to help educate the fact that, what we've been through, and that we're not the oppressors, and we've had our share of burdens. And as a matter of fact, there was trending on Twitter on Sunday was hashtag Jewish privilege, which I believe was a hashtag started by right-wing, far right, neo-Nazis about Jewish privilege. And I was taken over kind of by Jews sharing what Jewish privilege means, which is that basically explaining what we've been through. So it's like, I'll give some examples. And, for example, is it the privilege of my mom never getting to meet her grandparents because they were murdered? Or is it her parents being robbed of their childhood by being put in camps? Is that what Jewish privilege is? Hashtag. Or my dad getting beaten up every day. I'm just quoting different things from Twitter where they did the hashtag Jewish privilege. My dad getting beaten up every day at school for being a bad word, the K word, to kids in New Hampshire, throwing pennies at me on the bus, to pastors in Florida calling for my death and telling their congregation that knocking my teeth out and killing me would be God's work. Hashtag Jewish privilege. Hashtag Jewish privilege is when my grandparents were violently forced out of Iraq and Tunisia for being Jewish, with only the clothes on their back, along with 850,000 other Jews. They arrived to Israel with nothing, only speaking Arabic, living in a tent or shack for years. Or hashtag Jewish privilege is my daughter using her great-grandfather's Auschwitz tattoo number as her computer passcode. And then finally, hashtag I'm a member of hashtag Jewish privilege. Let's just say that I've been hated for being born Jewish. I've been called the K word and have had to avoid putting up the Star of David in my neighborhood because of anti-Semitism, the rise of neo-Nazis. I did not ask for this BS. That's hashtag Jewish privilege. And I think that that's important and helpful to share the narrative, to share with the world what it's like. And again, I'm sure a lot of you watching maybe have your own stories. But the thing that it slightly rubs me the wrong way, as important as it is that it implies that being Jewish is, I guess, unpleasant or burdensome, and it comes with all this like baggage, and maybe it's not worth it. That's almost the implication that I wasn't like super comfy with. So, while I value the response to the neo-Nazis who started it and the educational aspect of it, I guess my only little caveat on this social media movement is to just point out how blessed we are to be Jewish and how it is such a privilege. And when I first saw that it was trending on Twitter, hashtag Jewish privilege, I was like, it really is a privilege. I wonder like where this has gone on Twitter, but I believe with all my heart and soul, it is a privilege.
Speaking of understanding what you're saying and where it comes from, right? It's so interesting that the haters are saying that as a way to hate, and absolutely wrong. Like they're totally false on the one hand, proving them wrong by showing all these instances, very like just a drop in the huge bucket of what there really is, that of the instances that show that they're wrong. But at the same time, let's not forget who we are. And despite this, yes, we've been through a lot and we've gotten up, but that's not all we are. There's so much more to us.
Right. Exactly. I think that was kind of, again, my slight caveat on these comments is like, we're so much more than having that Jewish privilege, so to speak, this painful past. Again, you read it and you like you can't help but like pity us, and we deserve pity. This is true, but again, it kind of just implies like this terrible lot we've had, and how tough it is to have our history and our background, which I beg to differ, I guess, with that.
It's interesting. I was listening to a class today about the Parsha, and he was saying something in this week's Parsha, how we're not looking for honor, and that's a Torah value, that we don't pursue honor. And for example, even during our time, there's been a lot of, during Corona, tons of funerals, unfortunately, and people of great honor in the Jewish world who have passed away. And if it was back in normal times, there would have been huge funeral processions. But now, because of Corona, there wasn't. And it's that if we do the right thing, we're not looking for honor. We don't need people to honor us, because God knows what's going on and he knows what we're doing. And the ultimate honor is in his eyes, that, justice happens. Justice comes to those who do good and not good. And we don't need to pursue it. So I feel like with pity also, we don't need to looking for pity. Yes, we deserve pity, but I'm not looking for you to pity me. That's really not what I'm going for.
Right, exactly. And I would argue that that while these tweets have been important, they can't and shouldn't be our main focus. And just as you just said, Sarah, is that dwelling on our pain has never been like the Jewish way. And I believe that we would never have been able to survive and to thrive if that was the case, because it'd be too painful. It'd be too hard to ever pick up and carry on with our lives after everything we've been through and how many places we've been expelled from and how much suffering we've endured. If our only focus was perpetuating our pain and dwelling on that pain, we'd never be able to carry on. And I'm not saying, God forbid, that we sweep it under the rug or that we deny it. No, we need to remember. And as a matter of fact, we're approaching Tisha B'Av. We're in the middle of this 3-week period we discussed last week, and that's kind of the time where we focus on that pain. Tisha B'Av, especially, we mourn and we cry and we sit on the floor crying, and we do that, right? And we remember 2,000 years later the destruction of the temple and our bitter history, and we say lamentations about the Holocaust and very graphic, imagery that we've suffered through, and we remember. So I'm not saying, God forbid, that we try to forget. We don't try to forget. We have to remember.
Right. And there is so much so that there's a significant portion of the year that is designated for that specifically. Right.
But again, it can't and is not our focus. Again, it's a 3-week period of the year, of which 9 of those days are more intense, and one of those days is the most intense of all that. And the rest of the year, it's not. We always are meant to live our life understanding there's no temple and to feel that pain and to feel that loss. It's true, but it's not the overall focus. It's not what we're focused on. And again, when you think of everything we've been through, it would be too much. The exile, the expulsions, crusades, massacres, etc. Holocaust, of course, it was just simply too painful. So
you think about also everything that we have accomplished, right? And the reason people say Jewish privilege is, thank God there are so many Jews who are so accomplished and so successful. And overall, as a people, we're doing pretty well in this world. If you look at the Nobel Prizes or the inventions that come out of Israel, that doesn't come from a people who sits and dwells on the past. That comes from a people who takes the lessons from the past and uses that to move forward.
Beautiful. Yeah. Couldn't say any better, for sure. And again, some of these posts I've seen of the hashtag Jewish privilege reminds me of a phenomenon when Jews first moved from Europe to America in the early 1900s in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan. Basically, those who kept Shabbos would show up to work on a Sunday. They were told, if you don't come on Saturday, or on a Monday, I should say, if you don't come on Saturday, you're fired. They'd be fired, and they'd have to find a new job on following Monday. And they would often say to their children, and this did not bode well, by the way, for the education of their children in a Jewish way. They said in Yiddish, "Es ist schwer zu sein a Yid." It's difficult to be a Jew. And that's kind of what the kids heard growing up. And it's no wonder why a lot of the kids are not interested in that. They don't want a difficult life. And a lot of the kids kind of left those Jewish practices and that Judaism behind because they don't want that life of difficulty. So again, part of, to some extent, and again, it's important, but part of the reason it a little tiny bit rubbed me the wrong way about the Jewish privilege and the pain that comes with that is that it is such a privilege to be a Jew, despite the painful past that we've had. And I don't want to undermine that incredible privilege that it's been. There's a song we've recently picked up and love by a guy named Moshe Storch that my 2-year-old Esty calls the man song for
She
some
wants
reason.
to listen to the man.
I don't know what she calls him, the man. I don't know why.
Because of the words in the song.
He says something about the man.
Yeah.
Oh.
You're saying the words?
It's geschmack to be a Yid.
Someone once came over to me and asked me what it's like to be a Yid, to be a Jew. So, and it's like song and repeat, and then you repeat. And
someone once came over to me and asked me what it's like to be a Yid.
And then he says, this is what I told him, this is what I told him, this is what I told him. It's geschmack to be a Yid. So what does geschmack mean? Geschmack is a great Yiddish word. So this is, maybe we should start a Yiddish word of the day.
Yes. Okay. Geschmack is our Yiddish word of the day. It means literally it smells nice, but it really means this is great. Like
Danny's cholent is geschmack. You walk in the house and you smell
it. Then you just dig your teeth into it.
When we're making challah or
that smell is geschmack, yeah.
Cookies, whatever.
And the reality is, and again, this is kind of my feeling again, is that just why I was not super comfy with the hashtag was that just to be a Yid, to be Jewish, it is such a privilege, such an awesome thing. And, we get Shabbos once a week where we get that cholent and we get that challah, and you sit down with your family and you just bask and you turn everything off. And,
you take a day off. How many people don't take a day off?
It's
but God's telling us it's a commandment. You have to take a day off.
It's like early retirement. That's what Shabbos is every week, once a week. It's incredible. I wake up every morning, I get to study Torah, which invigorates me and it sharpens me. It excites me. I get to live a life guided by the brilliance of the Torah and the wisdom and the way that affects our marriage and the way we raise our children and the way we conduct our lives. It's so geschmack to be a Yid. And that's, to me, I guess, some of what Jewish privilege is the privilege to be a part of that and to be a part of that people and that system. I honestly, I feel like the luckiest person in the world because of my hashtag Jewish privilege and everything that comes with that. But I do feel so completely blessed. And again, acknowledging how fortunate I've been living in the time period we live in, where it's easier, I guess, to say that. But
despite all this anti-Semitism that's coming out, we really do live in a time where, you can't not be grateful that we can just practice Judaism openly. You can walk on the street, at least in America at the moment. You could, thank God, you could walk down the street wearing a yarmulke. I can go out with my boys in yarmulkes and, it's obvious that we're Jewish. Or the mezuzahs on our doors, or telling people we have to take a day off for Shabbos, whether it's on the kids' baseball teams or work or whatever it is.
Right.
Just all these things of having a menorah in our window, that we can do that. And we can be openly Jewish and feel pretty safe about it. It's really such a blessing, even in Europe, in Russia, there was stories of going to the mikvah, and that's another amazing Jewish practice. And people would have to hide to learn Torah, to do all these things. And the Mesiras Nefesh, the self-sacrifice they would put forth to be able to follow the Torah and to be Jewish. And here it's at our fingertips, right? We have bookshelves. We probably have hundreds of Jewish books, and we don't need to hide it. We can open them and learn from them anytime. We can log on to Torah anytime, or h.com, or any of these other amazing Jewish websites, and just learn freely. Like, not only are we free to do it, but there's so many resources at our fingertips. It's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, and to take such gratitude in that, I think is important. Well, again, we can never put our guards down, but to be grateful for everything we've had. So, just to pull everything together, what we've just said is, so what do we do about all this? And I think, again, one answer, and what's up, Frank? Good to see you. But one answer, again, is education, is sharing our story with people. But as I mentioned, it has to be more than that. And it has to be more than just a focus on our suffering and the victimhood that we've had.
I just give a shout out to, I never stopped to think about it to this extent, but I thought it was nice. The Maisel Museum of Jewish History right here, that's what they do, is they bring in groups from schools from all over Colorado, and they come and they learn about Jewish history, and they learn a little bit about what it is to be Jewish, because so many of these kids in different schools all over the state, they have never met a Jew before. And it's just like a little bit of that education.
Exactly. So education has to be, paramount, as we said, and it's a big part of it. But I think there's more. And I just want to, share maybe one or two other just practical things that we can do, again, in the response of the uprise of anti-Semitism, the uptick, I should say. And I'll share with you, actually, and this motivates me, and maybe we can think of it like this, when asking what to do about anti-Semitism. It's a question that I took with me, this I think was about 18 years ago, give or take, when I was walking around the death camps of Majdanek and Auschwitz. I believe my great-grandparents, I think they might have been murdered right there in Auschwitz. And it was powerful to be there. And a question that I, as a third-generation survivor, have thought about is, what can I do, to stick it to Hitler the most? Right? What can I do to most desecrate his memory? That's something that I think about. And, for me, the answer was, it's actually to go ahead and embrace the faith in the nation that he tried to eradicate, right? To take excessive pride in my eternal heritage, in my Judaism, and the thing that he tried to rid the world of. And specifically, I've shared this before, I think, but at the time, Sarah and I were dating, and it was, there it is, Moshe basically said it. Moshe knows this story. To have 6 kids, thank God, I guess at this point I have 6 kids, one for each million it represents. And that was the thought I had. Honestly, Moshe, was I was dating Sarah, and I'm like, dude, I found her, what are we waiting for? Let me keep building. Let me keep building what he took away. So this thought has escorted me a lot. We've been told in my family the story of, I'm named for my grandmother, blessed memory, who survived the war. But like so many survivors, she died early, and I never met her. She died, I think it was 10 months or so before my birth, or maybe less even. And I was named for her. And she said she lived to see one grandson, my brother. Today, I believe she would have 20-ish or more, living descendants embracing their Judaism very much. And she said at my brother's bris, the only bris of a grandchild she saw, she said, now that I've lived to see this moment, it's clear to me that Hitler is lost. And that kind of image always inspired me, that memory, again, that I wasn't around for at that point, but it's certainly been told to me before. And that has always motivated me.
I can't imagine going through all of that and the war, and this man and this army trying to decimate the whole Jewish people and more, and seeing the results of it firsthand and seeing the loss and appreciating what was there and is no longer there. And like, it hits somewhere that a survivor could think, maybe Hitler won. Look what he did, what he accomplished. Like, he destroyed so much. So how many towns, how many people, how many, like 6 million becomes just a number, but all those individuals and those families and those interests and the talents and everything. And I can imagine how going through life, she like maybe thought that, and to some extent, he accomplished part of his goal.
Right. And she lived to see that not be the case, right? That he didn't accomplish his goal. And I mean, it's just powerful. Just, the sheer loss, like for any of you who've, met a number of your great grandparents, great aunts and uncles, cousins, so on that side of the family, for me, that was never a thing because they weren't there. They were murdered.
Mm-hmm. So Youngrice, she talks about this so much. She grew up in Hungary and, as a kid before the war, and she survived. And, she has such warm memories and feelings of the past and what was there. And she would talk about it all the time because it really was such a big thing that so many of us, it's just hard to fathom that reality.
Right. Exactly. So 100%. So again, the question is, so what can we do? And I guess what I'm advocating is to embracing your identity as a Jew, to embrace your Judaism, to take excessive pride in it, and to think what you can do, again, to stick it to Hitler on your own level. For everyone, it's a different answer. And I wear my yarmulke as a Jewish privilege, so to speak. I wear it as a badge of honor and a responsibility that reminds me that I'm always a reflection of God's light. That people look at me, and sometimes, again, I'm the only Jew they'll ever meet or see. And I just think how awesome it is. Some people talk about, hiding their Judaism. But for me, I love the responsibility of flaunting it. And I want to flaunt it. And I want everyone to associate the guy who opens the door for people with the one who wears the yarmulke, and these types of things. And that's my response.
So growing up for me, I didn't grow up in a family that we were outwardly Jewish at all. And so when we actually started dating and Danny was wearing a yarmulke and, we'd go walk around the mall or whatever it was. And I would be with this guy who's wearing a yarmulke. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's outwardly Jewish and I'm with him. So maybe people realize that I'm Jewish too. And I just remember it was just such okay, we're going out. Everyone's going to know I'm Jewish. How am I going to act? How am I going to dress? Just that that acute awareness was so different for me. I just to share one more thing. It turns out, so for the Jewish experience, there's the staff gives each week, another staff member gives a short video about the Parsha that we send out in our weekly email. So this week is actually my turn. So I was like, let me learn something new about the Parsha. So I picked up this book. So normally when it's my video and I go to Torah anytime and I look for Parsha classes. But this week I just happened to pull out this book, Wisdom for Living by Rav Noach, the founder of Aish. These are his teachings. Anyways, I opened to this week's Parsha and let me see if I could just find it because you're not going to believe me if I just tell you that way. You can put it to faster. Okay. I opened to this week's Parsha and we were preparing our class. This was yesterday. So we'd already started preparing our class. And this week's Parsha, it says, Parshas Matos, the root of anti-Semitism. And he brings it out right here. I happened to open this book on this week. And because I was doing the video this week and here it is. So I just think throughout this whole thing, it's so, it's, in a way, it's easy to look at the facts and look what's going on, but something like this is just a reminder that God's with us. And it's one of my favorite stories about Joseph in the first book of the Torah is when his brothers sold him into slavery and he's being transported in this carriage to Egypt to be a slave. And it's like this terrible reality for him that he's stuck. And most of these carriages were going by were bringing with them foul smelling stuff. But this carriage that he so happened to be traveling in had spices. And it was like God saying, yes, I know you're going through a hard time, and I know this is difficult, but I'm here with you. And just to remember that drop of sweetness in it. And then just going back to being proud of being Jewish. So there's a great story in here. It's somewhat of a famous story. Rabbi Michal Torsky was on the airplane. And he's this Hasidic rabbi with a whole Hasidic Jewish garb. So that's like a long black coat with a belt and a big shtreimel, a hat that is very outwardly something, right? So he sits down on the plane, and he sits down next to this woman, and she says to him, here, look for the... she says to him, okay, so I have to find it. Wait, skipped ahead. She says to him, you are an embarrassment to the Jewish people, a disgrace. It is people like you who think they are still living in the Middle Ages that cause all the anger and anti-Semitism toward us. Wow. What a statement for someone to tell you, right? You're sitting on the plane. So what does he say without missing a beat? He says, pardon me, ma'am, but I'm Amish. So what's her response? Her response is, oh, I'm terribly sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Of course I respect people who respect their heritage. Please forgive me. So like, as long as he wasn't Jewish, it was okay. But the moment that he's Jewish and not someone else, then it's not okay to respect your heritage and where you came from. Like, why is that this double standard? And why should rejecting our heritage take this away from us? Like, we've seen time and time again, that's not how it works. Like, we're Jewish, there's anti-Semitism. And I like what you're saying a lot about we have to embrace it and not be afraid of it, because that's not the cause of it. And it's going to be there regardless. So we may as well know who we are and why people are hating on us. Even if we don't understand why, there is no valid reason why, but at least like appreciate who you are, that positive spin of the Jewish privilege. If people are going to say Jewish privilege, then you should really feel privileged. Like, people think you're privileged, so see the good in it.
Yeah, that's a great segue actually to, and we'll wrap up, pretty briefly. But there's a great rabbi in Boca Raton named Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg, and he actually wrote about Jewish privilege like a week or two ago before the hashtag went big. And I just want to share a couple quotes from him because I think it's very powerful and it's something that we can all think about. And he says basically that God wanted us to be privileged, so he trusted us and charged us to live virtuous and righteous lives and to transform his world in his vision. And for a Jew, Rabbi Goldberg writes, privilege doesn't mean access, opportunity, or favors. It means responsibility, an awesome responsibility to set an example, to live elevated, meaningful lives, to repair the world in his image, to be of service to others, to rise above how we may be treated by others, and to treat all with dignity, respect, and honor. He says it means an obligation to live more ethically, act more sensitively, conduct ourselves more honestly, and proclaim our faith in the Almighty with pride and distinction, never with shame or embarrassment. And we must recognize that a Jew never focuses on his own entitlement, but rather thinks how his resources can be better used to advance good in the world, including for the underprivileged. And he says that privilege is not only about the way you are thought of and treated by others, but how you think of and behave yourself. It's not how others treat you, but how you treat others. It isn't what others do to you, but what you do with what you have. So there's just some powerful ideas, I think, along the same lines from Rabbi Goldberg. And then I think, basically, again, what I want to leave with is that is the following, right? What is the response? What is my response to anti-Semitism? So in a nutshell, it's I want I want my response to be to live my life in a way that when somebody says something insensitive or does something, cruel against the Jews, that everyone around who sees it rises up in protest because of their experience with Jews is inconsistent with the attack on the Jew. So to be so inspired by what they've seen, by the way that I live my life and you live your lives and everyone else, that they cannot accept or tolerate an attack on a Jew, whether verbal or physical. And I just want to conclude actually just by sharing just a well-known story that sums it up perfectly. Then God willing, we'll call it a night there. I know we've gone over our intended time. The famous rabbi and historian Rabbi Beryl Wine lives in Israel. So he relates actually a very powerful story that he once met with an editor of the newspaper in Detroit, the Detroit Free Press, I believe it was. As a matter of fact, Mitch Albom, author of Tuesdays with Morrie, just wrote a beautiful piece on anti-Semitism for the Free Press, I think it's called. And he tells the following story, that he was called into an interview with the editor of this newspaper. And basically, the story goes that the editor's mother was helped out around the house. She worked a wealthy family, Jewish family in Detroit. And this woman was kind of like, the cleaning lady. She kept things tidy. And it happened to be one time this Jewish family in Detroit went away for like December 20th for Hanukkah somewhere. They come back on December 26th. And this sweet woman couldn't imagine what it would be like for this family, to come home and not have their house decorated for Christmas. And she loves this family and the way they treated her. And she took the money that was left for her, her own money, and she went out and bought a tree for this religious Jewish family in Detroit. And she bought a tree and decorated it and decorated the house with lights. And needless to say, the family comes back December 26th, whatever it is, and the woman is waiting there, so excited to see their reaction. And they see from afar, they did a double take. At first, they thought but that's not our house. They drove around the block and they realized, yeah, actually, that is our house. And they're kind of mortified. They live in a religious neighborhood. They're like, what do the neighbors think? And they're just not quite sure what to make of it all. And they walk in, and you can tell that this sweet woman is so excited to share her handiwork with this family that she adores and respects and works for. And, they have this interesting kind of meeting, after the family was away. And the way that the story goes is that after entering the house, Rabbi, it's told that the head of the family called, her name is Mary, into his study, and he says, quote, "In all of my whole life, no one has ever done such a beautiful thing for me as you did." He then takes out $100 bill, which was a very large sum of money in these days in the middle of the Depression, and gives it to her. Only after that did he explain to her that Jews actually do not have Christmas trees. That's not part of what we do. And when he finished telling the story, this is the editor of the Detroit, Free Press. He tells Rabbi Beryl Wine, quote, "And this is why there has never been an editorial critical of Israel in the Detroit Free Press since I became editor, and there never will be as long as I am the editor." So he basically was so moved by the story in their family, the sensitivity that a Jew had for his mother, and care in her feelings and how he treated her, that had lasting impact. And we should never do anything necessarily just for what's in it for me. We should act right and upright and honest and with integrity, because that's how we're meant to act. That's how we reflect God's light into the world. But I believe that by doing so, as open, proud Jews, that's where the impact can be made, is by, again, embracing our heritage and our history and our culture, and sharing it and living upright, honest lives. And I believe that can make a massive impact on humanity, and it can cause others like this editor to just speak up, when these things happen, and not stand by and not tolerate it because of their own experiences with the Jewish community.
So let's all do our part.
Do our part. And God willing, we'll pull through these challenging times and spread our light and share the beauty of who we are and educate, and God willing, educate ourselves and educate others. And we should only know good things and happiness and well-being. And yeah, thank you all for tuning in. And we'll see you next week.
See you. Are we going to see you next week?
Oh, we have to figure it out. Let us know maybe in the comments. We're going to start actually doing a live thing in the park, social distance, on Tuesday nights, the return of the live Schmorg. Is anyone here? Just let us know maybe in the comments, like, do you think we should have live from the bunker as a separate entity, or now that we're going to be live in person in the park, we can just kind of scrap this? What do you think? Should we keep live from the bunker on a different night or something, or just it'll be replaced by a live social distance park experience in the park?
We'd love to hear your feedback.
Love to hear your feedback.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Before we close it up, would appreciate any comments, just giving us advice what we should do, because we're not really sure, and that's why we're asking you. So let us know in the comments if this should be our last live from the bunker, just revert to the real life programming, or keep this going. Don't all speak up at once necessarily. Okay. All right. The people have spoken. Thank you. All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great night, and we'll see y'all maybe next week, maybe not. Yes, we'll see. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.